Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching from. We are now looking at communities and ecosystems. We look at change over time. That is referred to as ecological succession. Changes in environmental conditions have been there. And these changes normally in environmental conditions can reduce access to key resources and how invasions by competing species can lead to increases or decreases in species population. This shouldn't be so difficult to understand. We just simply take the environmental changes or conditions can actually bring about some reduction or loss in habitat, okay, of individual animals or population sizes. We also look at how the types and numbers of species in biological communities change in response to changing environmental conditions, such as we have environmental conditions such as fires, temperatures, or what we call climate change, the clearing of forests, okay, for agriculture purposes, all those such changes and what they bring about. So, mature forests and other ecosystems do not spring from nowhere. Okay, they spring up from a bare rock or bare soil. Instead, they undergo changes in their species composition over a long period of time. Actually, they say that the rocks, okay, is what makes up our soil. And when these rocks disintegrate, okay, into finer, small pieces, then we have sand. Okay, and it is on this sand that the trees can actually be planted and grow. So the gradual change that takes place, okay, where rock would disintegrate to become soil. And this process, I can assure you, is very long. It can take about 500 years just for rock to disintegrate and become soil. And so that kind of process is what actually is called as succession or change, ecological change. So gradual change in species composition in a given area is called ecological succession in species composition. Okay, during which some species colonize an area, they will come into this area, and their populations become more numerous. And when such happens, okay, other populations will come in and they will try to compete with this area population, and will lead to their populations to decline, and eventually this population will disappear. So in this process, colonizing or pioneer species, what we call as pioneer species, they will arrive first, and then later this species may be replaced by another species that will come, another set of species that will come later. So the area species are called as pioneer species, and then they're replaced by another species that comes. So normally we talk about two types of succession. We have the primary succession, and then we have the secondary succession. The primary succession will involve a gradual establishment of biotic communities in lifeless areas. These are areas where there was no life, okay, where there was no soil, okay, and then these organisms will establish themselves there, and then they will be taken over by another population. In the secondary succession, we're talking about there was life in the area, a particular area, but then maybe due to some environmental disturbances, this area was disturbed. Talk about earthquakes and so forth. Okay, and the life that comes, the succession that takes place in that area is called a secondary succession. Can we pause there? Okay, we were talking about secondary succession. We said in which a series of communities or ecosystems with different species develop in places containing soil or bottom sediment. So these places, they had actually natural soil and what. Okay, so natural ecological restoration. As part of the Earth's natural capital, both types of succession are examples of what we call natural ecological restoration, in which various forms of life adapt to changes in environmental conditions, result in changes to the species composition, population size, or diversity in a given area. Okay, there's a pictorial illustration of how these things take place. I will just, because I can't show you this pictorial thing, I'll just talk about, you have the rock formation. First of all, maybe you have ever corner, and you have a rock that formed, and from this rock you have lichens that would cause pioneer species that colonize that place. Lichens and mosses, those plants, early plant lives, and these they will help in breaking down the rock. Okay, and eventually, because of their presence there, that rock, there will be some soil particles, and when those soil particles appear, then small herbs or shrubs of plant material can now come and colonize that place. And when these come, they will, because they have found soil, okay, as substrate, they'll find soil and also moisture and so forth. When they come, they will colonize, they will take over the pioneer species. These shrubs will stay in that area, multiply and grow, and also they will provide some necessary nutrients, okay, for the next colonizer who will come after them. And now we're talking about healthy mass of plants that will come in. And these also, they will be taken over by jack pines, black whatever. Okay, these are now more bigger plants. After these, then bigger forests will appear, and that is what we call as the ecological succession. Okay, so succession does follow a predictable path, and that is what has been known over time, like just what I've been explaining. There's a predictable path normally that is followed. Okay, but however, some scientists have argued that actually it does not occur like that. Okay. Balance of nature in equation. This equilibrium model of succession is what ecologists once meant when they talked about the balance of nature. Okay. Over the last several decades, many ecologists have changed their views about balance and the equilibrium in nature. Under the balance of nature view, a large terrestrial community or ecosystem undergoing succession eventually became covered with the expected type of climax vegetation, such as a mature forest, just what I was explaining. Okay, they have argued that this does not actually occur in that pattern. They have their point of argument, because these are just theories, but from what I've explained, you can realize that actually things may happen that way. Okay, living systems are sustained through constant change. That we know very well. There is constant change in everything, and the sustenance of living organism or things is due to this ideology or idea of constant change. So, one such thing is what is called as inertia or persistence. This is the ability of a living system, such as a grassland or forest, to survive moderate disturbances. It's called inertia or persistence. Another factor is called resilience. This is the ability of a living system to be restored through secondary succession after moderate disturbance. Evidence suggests that some ecosystems have one of these properties but not the other. So they may have the inertia or the persistent property, or they might have the resilience. Okay, so e.g. tropical rainforests have high species diversity and high inertia, and thus they're resistant to significant alteration or destruction. They have that persistence, so they have the ability to survive little disturbances. Okay, I would have said that the limitation to succession in tropical rainforest can be due to the fact that nutrients are stored in the plant, and so when the plants are destroyed, the soil does not hold so much nutrients, and over time with the rains, when the soils are being washed away, the nutrients are being washed away as well. So eventually what you have is you will have poor soils that have no nutrients, and the regrowth or the growth of the forest may be delayed or may be slowed because of this aspect. The tipping point in succession. Tipping point, when you reach a tipping point, is like when you reach the edge of something, okay, where just a small energy or push will result in very abrupt and severe consequences. Could be death, okay, or irreversible. Okay, for example, once a certain number of trees have been eliminated from a stable rainforest, it can crash and become a grassland. Okay, so it will just require just a small change for it to crash. So tipping point, exceeding a tipping point is like falling off a cliff. When you fall, there is no way back. Once you fall, you have fallen. Okay, and this happened in a lot of things, talking about carbon dioxide and so forth. How do species therefore interact? Okay, now we come to the 5 types of species interaction that our assignment looked at. Okay, we have interactions, competition, predation, parasitism, mutualism, commensalism. These affect resource use and population sizes of the species in an ecosystem. One thing that I realized is in your assignment, most of you were not tackling the other part of the assignment question, which says, how does this affect the population sizes in an ecosystem? You are just talking about commensalism and what it is. How it affects population size was not taken care of. Yet it's very important. So no population can continue to grow indefinitely because of limitations on resources and because of competition among species for those resources. How does it population size? So you see the answers are everywhere. How do communities and ecosystems respond to changing environmental conditions? The structure and species composition of communities and ecosystems change in response to changing environmental conditions through a process called as ecological succession that we have already talked about. Okay, so we can now go through all these interspecific competition, okay, intraspecific, talk about predation, go on and on. This you have dealt with them in your assignment and you understand them quite well. Okay. So illustrations or interactions that help to limit population size illustrate one of the 4 scientific principles for sustainability. These interactions also influence the abilities of the interacting species to survive and reproduce. Such the interactions serve as agents of natural selection. Darwin in science, natural selection. The most common interaction between species is competition for limited resources. So there is competition among different for limited resources that are there. Okay. While fighting for resources does occur, most competition involves the ability of one species to become more efficient than other species, okay, in acquiring food and other resources that they need. So recall that each species plays a unique role in its ecosystem called ecological niche. Okay, some species are generalists, as we said, some are specialists. When 2 species compete with one another for the same resources, such as food, light, or space, their niches overlap. The greater this overlap, the more intense their competition for key resources. Right? Yeah. So ecological niche again does come. Okay. Competitive exclusion principle. Although different species may share some aspects of their niches, no 2 species can occupy the same ecological niche for very long periods of time. And this kind of concept is called as the competitive exclusion principle. When there is the intense competition between 2 species for the same resources, both species suffer harm by having reduced access to important resources. Can we break for a while?